Hello, everyone. Let's see. Let's go here. There we go. Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Anthony. I'm an artist based in Wilmington, Delaware, and I go to an art school known as Studio Incominati in Philadelphia. Now, last week we went over the side view of the anatomy of the arm. This is our previous lesson. Now we can see how the muscles that come in and insert themselves into the bone, how they create this form. And that form is descriptive of what happens on the surface of the skin. The muscles underneath will tell the story of how the skin forms. And now these are just diagrams. Everybody's personal anatomy is going to be different. Now today I have this poorly drawn rib cage here, and next to the rib cage we have the arms. So this bone here is going to be known as your humerus. That is the bone that the biceps attach to, as well as your triceps and your deltoid. Let's go over the bones real quick. So this bone in here is known as the humerus. And I'm going to write this very light, so I apologize if it's difficult to see. What we're doing is we're just going to go over the bones so we understand how the muscles attach, where they attach, and what they're attaching to help make sense of everything underneath. So this is your humerus. This little shape in here, it actually goes, it goes like in this shape on your back, right here. That is known as your scapula. Now that's going to be that plate that goes behind your rib cage. That's where your deltoid wraps around to. That's where your traps. So your traps are going to be up in here. That's where your traps attach to on the top of the scapula. Now this bone in here that the deltoid and the pectoralis attach to is known as your clavicle. This is your clavicle, or otherwise known as the collarbone. Now, on your forearm, this bone here, when you have your hand facing out, it's going to be the outside of your forearm. That's where that bone lies. That is known as your radius. And on the opposite side, that's known as your ulna. So this is the foundation upon which the muscles will attach themselves to the skeleton. And now that we got that through, we can go ahead and start attaching some muscles. I am referencing some guides here. This is a way for not just to teach others, but to teach myself as well. I know some of this offhand already, but I love going back and reestablishing that knowledge, strengthening the foundations, if you will. Let's see. Hey, buddy, how are you? You're noisy today. Yeah? Oh, please tell me more. You guys want to see a kitten? Here you go. I got myself a little guy. Look at him. Look at those beans. Or we should get back to anatomy. Okay. So, what we're doing here, right, is we're attaching the deltoid onto the humerus. So the deltoid usually attaches somewhere up in this upper region of the humerus bone here. It will come out from the top of the acromion process. That's this little flat top on the top of the collarbone where the scapula meets that collarbone. It'll attach itself right here, go about a third of the way, and it'll come out and around so it can attach to the side of that humerus bone in there. And if you remember last week's demonstration, that biceps brachii will attach itself right around here on the opposite side of the deltoid. That biceps brachii goes underneath in here. That's its ponderosus. It comes out, and then there's some fibers in here that will attach themselves. If I'm not mistaken, it attaches right here. So it'll come down, those fibers. That's where your bicep lands, on top of the humerus. So the biceps come out. This shoulder's kind of massive, honestly. It's not actually that big. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down just a little bit. The short head of those biceps will poke just a little bit. And because we're looking at the front view of the arm, we can't really see the back, which will hold the triceps. Go ahead and erase the humerus in there. Those biceps will attach themselves to the top of the shoulder up here, and then attach themselves on the bottom or the top portion of the ulna in here. Right in there. You get those little stringies. So the next muscle that we're going to go over attaches itself to the tendon of the triceps, which wraps in the back. So you can't really see it, but it will come out. Here we go. I got that. So it'll like kind of come down a little bit, bulge out because it's wrapping around that radius in here. And it will come down and attach themselves to the wrist. And there are tendinous fibers in here that will attach to your fingers, and that's what makes your fingers move. So this here, this is your brachioradialis. Brachioradialis. And these are the politically correct. No, I'm just kidding. These are the Latin verbiage. This is the Latin verbiage for these muscles. It'll attach itself in there, and that attaches on the opposite side to the tendon of the triceps, which sits right behind this front view of the biceps. Now, you have this very small muscle known as the palmaris, the pronator teres, and that comes from the back of the ulna. This is where like your elbow sits, so it'll attach right in there. It's kind of small, but it wraps around that tendon of the bicep in here. It kind of protects it a little bit, so that the tendon of the bicep will tuck underneath. You have that little muscle in there, and then you have all these flexor digitorum muscles that come this way. Hold on, baby. Give me 1 second. My cat had a litter, and she's been such a mom. Just a mama cat, no drama. Except when all the babies cry like that. So your digitorum muscles will come around. There you go. Look at these kittens. Whoa. A little kitten break. This one's pretty chill. Whoa. Boop, boop. You look kind of derpy. So these digitorum muscles, these are your flexors in here, which allow you to pull with your fingers. So that's what this grouping of muscles are in here. They'll attach themselves down there. You have this like small one that comes in the back. You have a bunch of ones in the front. I'm just grouping them together to show the shape of that muscle grouping, because they're all flexor muscles, so it doesn't, you don't really have to go too in depth with that. But on the other side of this biceps, right in here, you'll see this triceps medial head right there. So it kind of like pokes itself through, and then up top you have the triceps long head, and kind of pokes itself in here. Remember, this is the front view of your hand, so when you put your arm out in front like that, your bicep turns facing away from you, so it'll show a little bit of the underneath. This is your biceps, brachii, and this is your triceps long head, and this one in here is your triceps short head. These are going to be your flexor muscles. Now, if you want it, you know what? Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get a little bit more specific with these flexor muscles, just to give ourselves the edge here. So if we group that, right. So this is your ulna. This is your ulna. Those flexor muscles will attach themselves up here, come across over the bicep, remember? So over the bicep, and they'll kind of come out, provide this shape here, and they'll attach themselves to the palm, to the inside of that palm. So that top muscle in here, that's known, that actually like goes all the way across. So when it's in here, it'll go across and tuck underneath the brachioradialis. We're just gonna like open in that one in there. That one is your pronator teres. Pronator teres. Now, oh, kind of lost control. So the muscle underneath this one that kind of pokes, comes all the way from up here. That is your flexor carpi radialis. And then you have a couple others that just kind of tuck underneath there. You have your palmaris longus and your flexor carpi ulnaris. You don't have to concern yourselves with these names. I'm just like providing them, and it kind of helps me understand what's happening. But the whole point of showing this is to show you the shape of these muscles. They're kind of just like teardrops because they're being pulled in two different directions. So if this was a balloon and you just pulled it, it's going to create that little teardrop shape in there. Yeah, you got that in there. And these little muscles next to the flexor carpi radialis, these little flexors underneath, they round out. So if you're drawing, like, let's say you're drawing a comic book, right? Comic book character, and this guy is really shredded. Considering these muscles, how they round out and create these like little bumps, those little indents of the skin will cause shadow. So let's go ahead and, this is the arm, right? So this is what I'm describing over here. My cats are at the door. They don't like it when the doors are closed. So this is going to be the insertion point of those flexor muscles in here. This is the brachioradialis coming in, right? And when you get these like little shadows in here, that's the description of those little muscles in here. That's what you're describing. Same thing in here. So I can circumvent these two lines for like a little shadow in here, because that describes the insertion point of the bicep. So that's what we're describing in here. This whole grouping of these muscles can be simplified with just a shape, you know? Your arm is like, or your forearm, well, the entirety of your arm is like one big tube, right? So if I simplify this into two different tubes, or really three, because the hinge of the elbow is in here. I got another tube in here. This is the arm with a really short forearm. This is the arm, so just forms, and those forms have shape, and these muscles describe those shapes. This is like a tube, right? Those muscles are rounded. That's why it looks like a tube. And so, like, for instance, the bicep, it's rounded this way, but you also know now that it inserts to the top of that shoulder right in here and to the ulna over here. So like I said before, the balloon. So we're pulling the balloon in two different directions. And that's going to cause it to stretch out, right? Vertically in this case. And that'll cause this roundness to be elongated. So not only is it round in this sense, but it's round in this sense too. It's horizontal and vertical. And that's what we're describing in this form here. So this is the form of that bicep. Okay. All right, so let's go back up top to the deltoid here. It attaches itself here. These are those like strong, short fibers that create that attachment. So it's like a little bit of a ponerosis. And so remember, there are three heads of the deltoid. We can only see two in this case because we're viewing it from the front. And then the fibers kind of insert downward up top and then come out at you as you look at them from the front. Remember that they create this form in here. And let's go ahead and show the pectoralis as well. Now the pectoralis will attach itself just above where the deltoid attaches. So that deltoid, remember, it attaches like somewhere right in here. And the pectoralis will attach itself to this back portion of the clavicle, pretty much like the last 2/3 right in here. Now, this mark the separation of the deltoid and the pectoralis. Now, the clavicular head, which is the head up top, will attach itself from the back 2/3 of the clavicle and then wrap itself around to attach to the humerus in here. And then you have the major sternal head, which will attach itself there as well, but wraps ever so slightly around the bicep and comes down and attaches itself to the ribs here. And it'll attach the rest to the sternum. So you have this in here. And if we go ahead and erase the ribs in there, you can get a much better view of how the pectoralis attaches. So, clavicular head, sternal head, attach right about, looks like the sixth rib in here. This is where it'll attach. And this is that clavicular head of the pectoralis. This is the major sternal head, meaning it attaches to the sternum. It's the rib in there. Yep. So the muscle fibers will come out and then in because they're wrapping around the ribs and then attaching themselves to the side of the humerus underneath the deltoid. So it creates this interesting shape and this flow of coming out and then in, out and then in. That is your pectoralis in here. So what does this mean for the appearance on the skin? What it means is that this area that comes out and protrudes will be at a higher plane than the area that it attaches. So this little area in here will create an indent in the skin. It will pull on the skin, cause this to be a little bit more in shadow. Same thing for these attachments up here. When the clavicle is, because the clavicle has these attachments on the outside of them, the clavicle will look like it's protruding in the light. And the indent or the attachments of the muscle will create this indent in the skin, putting it more into like a dark light. All right. That's the bicep in here, and then the triceps long head, the medial head. This is the front of the bicep. It's the attachment. This is the brachioradialis. These are those flexor muscles. Remember, they're round this way and this way. I hope this is a much better view of how the anatomy interplays with the body. I'm like trying to be so casual with my drawing, and internally I'm just like freaking out because I don't think it looks good. But that's okay. Like, we do this because it's important to do, you know? You kind of have to get over yourself a little bit. Yeah, so that's the insertion point. This is the insertion point. I love how these muscles interplay. It creates this almost like a wormhole effect, you know, like all this gravity just being pushed or pulled into this one spot. And that's where that deltoid attaches, right in there. And that's where that pectoralis attaches, and it's pushed out this way because the bicep comes in here. There's a lot going on in this section, and it's such a beautiful spot when you're looking at the figure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to trace over with this red color pencil. I always start with the bicep. There's something about the bicep that makes me like gravitate toward it. Remember, this is that biceps brachii. Biceps brachii sits on top of the humerus from this view. That's the tricep long head in the back there. Let's go ahead and separate those two. Biceps brachii attaches in there, inserts itself. Yeah. This is the triceps medial head in there. Back here, this is where the back of the ulna is. And that's what your elbow is. So let's go ahead and mark these fibers in here with a pencil. Yep. And then the brachioradialis comes out, attaches itself to the wrist. Remember, this wraps, so it still creates this like small protrusion and kind of rounds out because it's still bubbly, almost like a balloon, right? But because it's attaching in two different spots, it will wrap. So that form will create a certain shape based off the muscles and the way that they flow. Like if this is the bone in here and they wrap in the back all the way around to the front, they're going to create a shape. It creates this little flow in here. And then all your flexor muscles in here come out and down. These are those tendinous fibers. Top of those flexor muscles. Remember, this is the insertion point of the bicep. So it'll tuck under these muscles. And there's that muscle in here that will tuck underneath the brachioradialis. And these muscles go down in here. And I'm just grouping them all together. My pencil's getting kind of blunt in there, so it's not as fine as I would like it to be. And the point still stands. These are those separations between the muscles. And then you have your tendinous fibers. And all the tendinous fibers are just these very tight mass groupings of the muscle fibers. They help hold your muscles together. Oh, great. Yay. Right, this is probably the best I'm going to get it. So all those tight groupings of those muscle fibers will come out this way. And remember, there's three heads of the deltoid. But from this view, we can only see these front two, front head and the medial head. And they tuck in behind the bicep to attach to the humerus. Yep. And then that top head of the pectoralis, otherwise known as the clavicular head, because it attaches to the clavicle, it's going to be up here, wraps around. Hi, baby. I wonder if you guys can hear that kitten. They're so noisy. You ever notice how noisy kittens are? Just yelling at the world. Do your thing, homie. So these muscles follow this pattern because it's not just because, the flow of these muscles aren't just happening because it looks cool and interesting. It's happening because it's attaching themselves to certain points. The attachment's here on the clavicle, and the attachment underneath these muscles onto the humerus, force the muscles to flow in this way. And sharpen my pencil again. I love talking about anatomy. It's one of my favorite things, and I've been looking for an excuse to learn more, and what better excuse than to teach others, right? And this is helping me to learn and to be more thoughtful about my work. There we go. And then all these fibers coming out. Oh my God. Okay. Let's try the other end. See if that'll work. Oh my goodness. These pencils suck. They do not stay sturdy. That's okay though. Okay. Okay. So this is the edge of that pectoralis coming in here. Right in there. And it tucks underneath because remember it's attaching to the humerus. All these lines, they flow. We're just following the flow of that pull. You know, I've learned a lot more about myself studying anatomy than I have with anything else. Like teaching yourself the things you want to know will teach you a lot about yourself. And these are the tendinous fibers here. They usually show up as white in a textbook, but because we're kind of growing this, but we're use that pencil to show the attachment. Right. Yeah, so that is your deltoid. That's your pectoralis in here. Here, I didn't notice it was blurry. But that's your deltoid. That's your pectoralis in here. This is your biceps brachii tucking in behind the brachioradialis and the flexor muscles in here. All right. So next week we can go over the back view of the arm. Or we can probably like go across and do some of the torso muscles. I think we should stick with the arm next week. We'd probably do the back of the arm next week, so that way we get a full, rounded out view of the arm, and then we can go into the torso next. And something I really want to do is go into the head and neck and how they attach to the torso. That's something I've been wanting to get into. So we'll get into that as soon as we can. If you stuck around, thank you. I appreciate you. I love you so much. Have a great day.